Guatemalan Maya families fear migrant relatives among Mexican massacre victims. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you are tuning in. My name is Jonathan Torres-Herrera, and you are watching or listening to the JTH show. Today, let's talk about if Mexicans are killing caravan migrants. But first, roll the intro. All right. Thank you for coming back and watching our current events commentary news channel here that we're running. And if you're new here, we are available obviously here on YouTube or on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Radio Public. Again, we really appreciate for anyone that takes the time to watch any of our videos, right, Josh?
Yeah, exactly. And particularly when it's an episode like today, it's not always the fun that we've been having over the past week. It's a little bit of a heavier topic today, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, but you know what? It's part of the news and it needs to be covered. And there are some people that are gonna just kind of shrug their shoulders and say, "Man, doesn't really affect me." But obviously, we know that for that being true, there's the opposite is true as well. And of course, there are some people that are going to say, hey, you know what? This definitely affects me. And with that, let's get right into it. Today's story is, unfortunately, like Josh said, a little bit of a heavy-hearted because it involves, the at this point, what it looks like the massacre of migrants. And for that, we turn to the NBCnews.com website, where they had an article titled, Guatemalan Maya families fear migrant relatives among Mexican massacre victims. If confirmed that the victims were migrants, the attack would be among the worst atrocities in recent years against Central Americans in Mexico. It also added that the Guatemalan Mayan family said Monday they fear relatives among the bodies found over the weekend in a remote part of northern Mexico, along a route popular with migrant smugglers heading towards the U.S. border. After receiving a tip-off in the border state of Tamaulipas in northern Mexico, Mexican authorities recovered 19 bodies, many of which had gunshot wounds and were badly charred. So far, the dead have not been identified. So it is of course devastating, right, to hear of a lost life, especially when we're not talking about people that I don't know, that in some fashion deserved it. It's different when you hear like, I don't know, burglar or for that matter murderer, lose his life and escape or some random story. You're like, well, the guy deserved it. In this particular case, 19 bodies, of which we know nothing about, other than were 19 human beings that unfortunately were killed and even burned. Right. So in a different article that I translated to English, a website called betanzos.com. That one, again, in rough translation, added that allegedly they believe for sure, unlike in the NBC article that I just read, they believe for sure to be the bodies of Central Americans, right, or people with Central American origins. In addition, it said that these bodies were found in two different vehicles, both which were burned. They're more descriptive. I'll leave out the two fine details, but I will put the links down below on the YouTube channel if you want to read it for yourself. I really don't feel like getting this particular video demonetized because I want to get the information out, right? And I don't want YouTube to flag it down. But I will say that it has some gruesome details, right, of how the bodies were found. All apparently with gunshots, right? And again, burned. It is devastating. It is tragic. But the question here that we really have to ask ourselves is, why is it that we now have apparently people in Mexico taking matters into their own hands? Yes, some of these articles are also pointing the finger at possibly cartel activity, involved in these atrocities, but nobody really has taken credit for them. And I highly doubt that there will be any one cartel to come out, even though allegedly the area is being disputed among different groups. I don't see any of them coming out and be like, "Oh, it was us." Just anybody was wondering, it was actually us who did this. No, at this point, the idea is that the bodies of the Central Americans, mainly presumably or presumed to be from Guatemala, were done by people in Mexico, right? And again, is this a sign of people taking matters into their own hands? There are a large number of people that are tired and have publicly come out, whether it be in forums, comments, videos, all over social media saying, I am a citizen of Mexico and I don't want to see these caravans coming through my city, my town, because of different reasons. Why? Right at the top, we have people complaining that some of these caravans leave behind a trail of garbage, everywhere, that they are fed or they are clothed, and they'll leave just trash everywhere. They'll pretty much destroy small parks or wherever they are, temporarily placed while they continue on their journey. And then who has to clean up after everything are the citizens of, again, that town or that city, right? And a lot of people in Mexico are saying, we're done with that. We don't want to do this anymore. Of course, then you have other things like allegedly some people in those caravans that are bringing across what's called el trato de blancas, which is essentially trafficking young women, right? Or women, period, for, not good reasons, right? For ones that get across the border to, put them into prostitution and stuff like that. So there are just a ton of problems with these migrant caravans. It's not just if it's the trash, we'll take care of that. No. Again, there are much more or many more hidden, right? And nefarious reasons behind some of these caravans. Every single person, no. Every single caravan, no. But many, yes. And there's even another article that you had, Josh, right?
Yeah, that was well, actually this was going a little bit closer to the root of probably where this is coming from, and it was actually coming straight from the BBC, and the headline was "Migrant Caravan in Guatemala blocks thousands bound for US." And there's a little video here, we're just going to put that in.
Tiraron lacrimógeno. Tiraron gas lacrimógeno. Empezaron a tirar gas lacrimógeno. Mira que el pobre vos se ahogó,
Okay, so we can see in that video that there's a lot of strife going through there in Guatemala at the moment as people from Honduras or other Central American countries are trying to get through. I think the BBC said that there was an estimated 7,000 migrants, mostly from Honduras, who have entered in recent days fleeing poverty and violence. They hope to travel through Mexico to get to the US border. And of course, every year, tens of thousands of Central Americans attempt this perilous journey to try and reach the US, often on foot, in groups known as caravans. So, yeah, this is, it's absolutely horrible what's going on there, particularly in Central America as well. I think we've seen over the past couple of decades that, they've been going through serious economic strife. And even now with coronavirus going on and all that, it's going to be even worse now. So people are really at the end of their rope. And you have to think about it in the mind of someone who's actually willing to, as it said, walk thousands of miles just to better their life. It's not just something like, oh yeah, I could do with a better life. I could do with a little bit, maybe a garden. I'd like a garden with grass or something like that. It's not just as simple as that. These people are scared of being prisoners in their own country, essentially, to put it one way. Their fear of death, their fear of losing all their money. It's terrible, really.
Yeah, it is a double-edged sword for the person directly, right? Because I think this is a multi-layered problem. For the person directly migrating, right, from any of these Central American countries, it's Do I stay in my country and deal with whatever problems it is that I was born into, right? Or do I travel across Mexico and other countries as well, right? Depending on where they're coming from, and then possibly face other problems, other issues, deadly problems, right? Like we are now talking about today, right? Where I might be picked up and killed to make an example of, right? Or at least that's the idea that I'm assuming, the people behind this atrocity were trying to, send a message and saying, we're going to make an example out of these people. And then ultimately is when I do, and finally, and if cross to the U.S., I don't know what awaits there. Because I think while the U.S., right, arguably, I know some people will say, is pretty damn good in comparison to many other parts of the world, it is not paradise, right? It is not a 100% safe haven for anyone and everyone that comes here, right? We have many problems of our own. Again, arguably, we are much better and in a much better status, right? Here as a person, as a human being, than if you are in most parts of the world. Okay, so with that said, I will say that at a completely different layer, not at the individual migrant, at a different layer, now we have an example, the countries, right, that are essentially either allowing the migration to happen or kind of turning a blind eye, however you want to put it. And unfortunately, their citizens are having to deal with these caravans, right, traveling through their cities, their towns, like I said earlier, right? That's another level of issues. And then yet again, another level is what happens at the destination of where these, migrants are heading towards, right? In many cases, it's an example somewhere like Tijuana. Now, I don't know how, involved some of you guys were with the news early last year, where you had people in Tijuana, right, that were literally battling these, group of migrants with rocks. Like they were literally throwing rocks at each other. It was like a whole, scandal. There was even a reporter that I mentioned here on the show sometimes, Alfredo Alvarez, who was there, like at the scene. He was trying to hide underneath cars because, he was in Playas at Tijuana, which is a famous beach there in TJ. And they were, again, throwing bottles, rocks. Like, they were literally going at, kind of say war. I don't want to say too dramatic, but that's what it looked like, right? And again, what was it? Why was it? Because citizens in Tijuana felt like we're damn tired of all the chaos that some of these people are doing. Now, it could be one or two individuals, to be fair. It could be 4 or 5. It doesn't matter. Once somebody from the caravan, right, start doing something that the townspeople don't agree with, they're going to blame the whole damn pod. It's unfortunate, right? But it is a reality. Now, here's also another layer, right? Speaking of all these layers, that is not helping, and that's the misinformation. And for that, we have to turn to the current new administration, right? Which is with Joe Biden's administration. So I mentioned it, I think a video or two ago, of what the new, policies, that Joe Biden was immediately going to act on. And for that, we have to look an example at Joe Biden's proposal, which included in hours, by the way, after he was sworn in, according to political.com, a pathway to citizenship for 11 million undocumented immigrants, expand refugees resettlement, and more technology deployed to the border. Though he is leaving Congress to hash out the mechanics of passing the immigration plan, he's also moving ahead with a slate of executive actions on Friday, meaning this past Friday. Among the orders was the works are one to restore asylum protections, and another that creates a task force to reunite families separated at the border. So when you see an article like this, and I'm even, reading it myself, I can already tell, because of my involvement in politics and the news, that this is like a snippet, like a headline. Even everything I just read, it's considered a headline, because there are so many other details that this, article is not mentioning. And why do I say that, right? To you, to I, that can be obvious. to people maybe translating this very website to, or people that are sharing this among social media, it gets to the ears of someone way down south, right, of the border. I mean, way down south. And they're seeing like, oh my God, pathway to citizenship, translating it in their native tongue and say, oh my God, that means that we know that's us guys, let's go. Right? So that's misinformation, right? Because by the way, one thing that I know, again, because I'm involved in all this, that I mentioned in that previous video was that it was this year, people that were already in the country as of January, meaning this 2021, the policy would apply only to those in the U.S. at the start of this year. This article doesn't say that. So if this same article gets, again, to the ears of someone that doesn't know any better, that doesn't do any kind of further research, this is a hallway pass for them. This is a green light. Let's go to the U.S. This new president, right? However it's translated, by the way, it's like, let's go. It's saying that, it's a pathway for citizenship for 11 million undocumented immigrants. And all they see that in 11 million, all they would see that it's me. I'm part of that 11 million once I get there. Does that make sense? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, Joe Biden's really kind of shot himself in the foot, and in trying to do something very humanitarian, he's been quite naive, actually, with his move, to be fair, because he doesn't fully understand what really goes on south of the border by the sounds of things. I mean, he could prove me wrong, but just by trying to be populist and change the policy, I mean, I completely agree with the policy. It's just the way that it's been implied and the way that the word's gone out to it. It's just really shot him in the foot, like I said, being the humanitarian, which he wants to be, and be popular, which he wants to be. He might have the blood of these 90 people on his hands.
Yeah, and that's a question, right, that we have to ask ourselves. Is it just, Mexicans in Mexico taking it upon themselves to deal with the Caravan problem that they're perceiving as a problem, of course, right? Or is it also in the hands of, like you just said, Joe Biden and his administration? Which, by the way, it's something that even some U.S. states are fighting up against. Right before we started filming, I literally got an alert from Bloomberg. Headline: Texas wins nationwide order halting Biden's deportation freeze. So this again tags right along with what I just said. In the article, it reads that the U.S. government's plan to pause deportations of undocumented immigrants for 100 days starting this Friday was temporarily blocked by a judge in a preliminary victory for Texas, which sued President Joe Biden's administration just 2 days after it started. So one thing that we have to realize is, as an example, Texas is one, not the only, but one of a few states that borders with Mexico. And for many decades, some of these states, again, bordering to Mexico, have complained, right, that, hey, they've seen spikes of people illegally crossing their land, their property. And, in that crossing, they destroy fences, they destroy property lines. They unfortunately have even killed dogs, because maybe the dogs come after them, so they'll kill the animal to prevent it from chasing them or harming them. There's been all kinds of crazy news that I've seen and heard. So some of you guys know that I live in El Paso, Texas, which is a city that literally is back to back like Tijuana. I have a thing for cities like that. I have heard stories of people saying, yeah, I have like a few acres, a little bit further outside of El Paso. And my dogs I kill all the time. They get poisoned all the time, and that's when I know that, probably a few dozen immigrants probably just came through my land over the night. And I woke up and my dog's dead or something. Cattle will also be, unfortunately, cattle will escape, because again, they're taking down some of these fences. Right. So then, of course, you have ranchers and stuff like that chasing after their own animal that can get hit in the freeway. I mean, it's a domino effect of problems. Right. It's not just people crossing a line in the ground. That's like some people try to get romantic about. It's not just that, folks. It goes beyond that. Right. I have said it very publicly before. I am extremely split. It is very difficult for me as an individual. I don't have to be a hypocrite in saying that, oh, I'm all for open borders, or no, I'm not for open borders. I am split because I've said it. I have family here that is illegal, right? And at the same time, I have heard stories from close friends and relatives of what illegal immigration has done to them, right? In different scenarios. And it's a very difficult thing to decide on, right? It's not a just black and white situation, but we have to tread carefully, right? Which is what I fear that the administration here of Joe Biden, in light of kind of appealing to the masses, like Josh said, maybe didn't measure their words properly, right? And again, it has, I believe, not only has it already motivated people to join these caravans, but I don't think it's going to, for sure, not deteriorate the movement, right? It's just it's like adding more fuel to a already burning fire, right? That doesn't need any more fuel. It's like if you had a plan for this, I think it should have been rolled out in phases, right? Which he might, at this point, seeing what's happening, he might. But going back to what's happening with Mexicans in Mexico, can you blame them, right? For a lot of them trying to protect their lands, right? Their sovereignty. When the U.S. has done it in the past, and either they're protecting, an example, military bases across seas, and you're like, oh well, hey, they're protecting themselves and our people there. Well, same can be said for people in Mexico. They're going to be saying, well, we're going to take the same stance. The U.S. does it all the time, so we're going to do it as well. We're protecting our lands, right? Certainly, you have like the president of Mexico, Obrador, right? Which recently, by the way, side note, got COVID. So bless his heart. Hopefully, he's fine. But not long ago, he was looked at as, hey, are you going to do anything about these migrant caravans? And essentially, in so many words, my understanding, I don't know if he had a switch of heart, but my understanding was like, hey, big hugs. We don't need to fight. They're not trying to stay in Mexico. They're trying to go to the U.S. or some kind of statement, he gave in his like daily freaking briefings that he does. So, again, if the government is not going to do anything about it, the people will.
Well, yeah. I mean, the thing is like he benefits greatly for that. You know what I mean? These border crossings aren't free. Who gets paid for them? Who runs them? Cartels. Who do cartels have to pay to keep moving?
Right.
Government. So, I don't think AMLO is quite the humanitarian which he seems. He just sees a new Rolex, pretty much.
Jeez.
I mean, that could be it. That might be a bit conspiratorial, but it could very well be. This is all conjecture, by the way. This is all conjecture. Don't quote me on this.
Of course, man. Same here, right? I mean, I agree. But I mean, that's all really we have, right? Without then coming out on camera and admitting to what we're saying, one can only theorize as to like what is it that's motivating some of these bureaucrats, right, to not doing what's right, right? So people start getting, people like you and I start getting these ideas like, hey, I wonder if they're actually benefiting in some way, and that's why they're not doing, what's right, I will also say, by the way, that I guess just a tad bit in their defense, some of these caravans, as we saw in that video, they quite frankly don't give a shit. I mean, I'm just gonna put it that way. Let's be honest and blunt about it. They don't. It's not like they're asking, please, can we cross? I mean, a lot of them are forcing their way through, right? No matter what border it is, no matter if it's Guatemala's border, no matter if it's Mexican's border. Again, going back and reference something that I have in memory, back in 2019 maybe or 2020, there was that caravan that rushed through the San Isidro border, or was trying to at least. It made headlines all over, right? Because it's the first time that it has happened, right? At least in recent history, where you had them literally bum rushing, call it, the border, in the U.S. between Tijuana and San Diego.
acción de los migrantes hizo que la noche del jueves el gobierno guatemalteco amenazara con capturarlos y enviarlos de regreso a su país.
And it's like, again, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with people that are like, we're going to get through one way or another? They did it in Chiapas. I remember that video as well from Chiapas, you know, where Mexico was trying to stop them and they got through, you know, throwing rocks and throwing God knows what. They got through. So it's like, you know, again, to be kind of like the devil's advocate just a little bit, you know, if you look at someone like AMLO or Trump or Obama or even now Biden, and you ask any of these, you know, top leaders, like, hey, so how do you deal with that? Short of shooting them, I mean, how do you deal with them? How do you deal with some of these caravans are like the tactic is bum rushing, rock throwing, bottle throwing, and then, you know.
Well, here's one thing that they do. This is again quite conspiratorial, but it seems like they invest in media coverage, in slamming immigrants. They invest in that, so then they let the people take care of it. Like we've seen here in Mexico, like we see there in Texas. It's very popular that border control is something to be invested in. It's not something. I mean, if I'm quite honest, I think if Biden really wanted to help, he would have helped at the cause of the problem, which would be investing in relief to maybe these countries in Honduras. Problem with that is the governments of those countries have not had a good track history with the US of taking money, taking relief, or resources of those kinds. So it is a difficult situation, but I think that's the only way that they can deal with it. They use Fox News, immigrants, migrants. Ooh, everyone be scared. They're coming for us. They're coming for our jobs, you know, and all that kind of thing. And creating this culture of hate migrants.
Right. Yeah, I mean it's a tough one, man. I think just personally speaking, I've heard all types of different kinds of stories. You know, I've heard it from, you know, if we're gonna get political, from the left and the right. You know, in terms of people that are pro immigration, and people that are 100% like against it. Like, you know, they're like, nope, I don't want not one new person, and that's radicalism. And I'm not with that either. But you know, when it comes to the media coverage, I agree, you know, that it's typically demonized, right? Like, ooh, the boogeyman kind of thing. And it's not necessarily true in that way, right? And I think it happens in Mexico too, right? But again, that's because it's makes money, right? I think at the, yet again, it comes down to money. It comes down to the media, whether it be in links, whether it be in YouTube videos, whether it be just on, you know, old-fashioned TV, it gets viewers. It gets people to click. It gets people to, you know, stay tuned and watch. And it's very unfortunate, right? Because you're going to have people that, you know, don't have the best track record for being truthful, but they're entertaining. Whether you're talking about Tucker Carlson on Fox News, right? Or you're talking about someone like the guy with white hair, like he's completely white hair. God, he's on CNN.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah,
I know who you're talking about, but I can't remember his name.
Yeah, well, that guy, right? That
yeah.
he's, you know, that he's like the main anchor there, right, or whatever his name is. So either one of these folks, right? People usually, because again, they're entertaining. They're like, oh. What is his opinion over it, right? And then whatever he says is what I'm gonna go for. So
his name's Anderson Cooper.
Anderson Cooper. Thank you. That's the guy. You know, one's more douchier than the other one. I will say that at least. You know, I'm not a big fan of Tucker Carlson, which is it's a shame because he's from San Diego, so it's, you know, my hometown. But you know, he's a bit of a schmuck. But again, I don't also agree with Anderson Cooper and his dramatics, right? I feel like there are always these weird antics to like get you like to manipulate you, you know. And at least personally speaking, because I'm always preaching critical thinking, I see through that shit, right? And it's like one is trying to make you feel guilty for not being 100% pro-immigration, and I'm talking about Anderson Cooper here. And I'm like, dude, you know, we have to listen to the other side, and you can't again victimize 100% and shame anybody or blame him, you know, into shaming them, to feeling them like, damn, if I say anything at all I'm a racist. Or again, on the other side with stupid Tucker Carlson, where he's like, oh, and the migrants in your jobs, and your wife. Where is your wife right now? It's like, dude, come on, man. Shit. Like, stop it. But yeah, anyways, unfortunately, guys, that is it for the story. But it is something that we wanted to speak about. Leave a comment down below. I mean, these are just two guys with their points of views. And the way I'm going to learn more, you're going to learn more, is by, giving each other questions and having a discussion. Nothing is more important, I think, nowadays than having a discussion, right? People always want to rush to action because they feel like that's the way we make change. Yeah. Slow down, man. We got to do some talking before you make some of these actions that you're planning on doing. Like, again, not to be, not to beat a dead horse, but like Obama did, Biden did. Oh, you caught that? Yeah, that's right. I think all of them have done hasty, decisions with immigration. You got that? Yeah. But Biden is just the latest in the string of presidents that they'll come out with these decisions, right? Day one, we're going to sign this. It's like, slow down. Let's talk. So leave a comment down below. If they're not going to talk to us, we should talk among ourselves, right? Because that's what, at the end of the day, what this show is for, is getting a discussion going, right?
Absolutely. What was the name of that anchor against migrants again? What was his name?
Yeah, Anderson Cooper. Oh,
Cooper,
Tucker Carlson.
Tucker Carlson. Everyone tweet at Tucker Carlson now. The JTH show brought me here. You're a schmuck.
You're a schmuck. He is, man. He is. He for a long time, I used to hear him just in the background when I used to make these shows,
right.
And more and more and more, I found myself like, guy, because again, the dramatics, and again, to be fair, I do the same thing with Anderson Cooper. I just don't like the dramatics. It doesn't buy my vote, if you want to say that, right? Same thing that I don't like,
right.
Primarily, believe it or not, that's actually the number one reason why I actually didn't like Trump, is because I don't like the dramatics, right? I think that we have too much
right.
of that. Social media and all that shit is toxic. We have way too much dramatics out there. Someone's always crying. Someone's always yelling. Another one that I used to roll my eyes out so much was Alex Jones, because throwing papers and cops, and like yelling. It's like, jeez, man, not every episode. I'm okay with someone feeling passionate over something, right? I'm sure there will be one day where I'm going to get very passionate over, and you're going to have to tell me to calm down. But not every episode is like that. I'm sorry. That's not reality. If you actually met someone like that, what would you would not want to associate with them. You're like, oh, not this guy. Holy shit, not this guy. This guy, every conversation we have, it could be about lunch, and he's like, soup is great. Soup is awesome. And it's like, oh shit, dude, calm down, man. All right, calm down. But anyways, yeah, that's it for today, guys. We appreciate you guys watching, and again, leave a comment down below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and then ring that notification. And if we deserve it, join the show. There's that join button. Click the join button and welcome. And until next time, see ya. Hey, thanks for watching the JTH show. Remember, you can catch all the episodes, full episodes, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Radio Public. You can also visit www.thejthshow.com to catch episodes there, and to catch anything that we had to blur out because of YouTube or any other platform. We usually put all of our raw information in there that is uncensored. You can also become a member at www.thejthshow.com to catch all the special perks. Thanks for watching.